Aviation Minister is staying ministry to hold emergency meet on Jet Airways plane grounding. This is, of course, a developing story with what's happening with Jet Airways. Nantara, does this come as a surprise?
In fact, I'm wondering what took so long for this to actually take place, as the Civil Aviation Minister Suresh Prabhu directing the Secretary of the Ministry of Civil Aviation to call for an emergency meeting on all of the grounding of flights and planes by Jet Airways, as well as advance bookings, cancellations, refunds and safety issues. Has asked the Secretary to get a report on Jet's compliance issue immediately from the DGCA. This is extremely important. There is a grammatical error on that plate. I'm going to ask the producer to remove this. Let me just quote what there's an error over there. Let's remove it. He's not asked Jayant Sinha this. The tweet put out by Suresh Prabhu is as follows. Let's just copy paste it for our viewers. Directed the Secretary of the Ministry of Civil Aviation to hold an emergency meeting on grounding of flights by Jet Airways, advance bookings, cancellation, refunds and safety issues, if any. Asked him to get a report on Jet compliance issues immediately from the DGCA. Suresh Prabhu then tags his junior minister Jayant Sinha in that tweet. So I think, over there is where we made a mistake. I apologize to the viewers over there. This is extremely important. Like I said, it had to happen. It's finally happened. Pankaj, I don't know when was the last time you tried to book a flight. Thanks to Jet grounding its flight, it has a 40% market share of slots in Bombay, 30% of slots in New Delhi. You have seen a price surge in airfares. Of course, after that, you've had the Boeing 737 MAX issue, the Indigo pilots shortage, which has all led to airfares surging. But the fact is, with Jet bankrupt, the emergency funding bailout plan not working out. It's a story we broke right here in ET Now last night, with Etihad talking tough, saying it's not going to put in any money. In fact, it wants to exit its 24% stake. Jet is indeed in dire straits. It's taking advance bookings, it's cancelling new flights every day, it's leading to massive chaos, confusion and airfare surge. Now, the fact that pilots are not being paid is a major safety issue. So finally, the DGCA will have to swing into action. It didn't do so all this time. In fact, it went to great lengths to deny that it was banning advance bookings of all Jet flights. But with Suresh Prabhu swinging into action and putting out this tweet, I guess the DGCA's hands may also be tied. It is a safety issue, Pankaj. Would you want to be flown in a plane where the pilot may not have been paid for 3 months, is worried about his home loan, is worried about his car loan? It is a major safety issue. The auditor of Jet Airways, about 9 months back, anyway said that Jet is not a going concern, which means his net worth had eroded completely. Now his joint venture partner Etihad is talking tough. The government has had no choice but to swing into action. It is also an election year. So the government has done what it can. The Sovereign Wealth Fund, the NIIF, being told to pick up a 20% stake in Jet Airways along with the lenders, so that the lenders and NIIF would become a majority shareholder in the beleaguered airline. But the emergency funding is just not working out, and that means the pilots are not being paid, grounding of flights, grounding of planes, airfare surge and massive inconvenience for passengers, and of course safety is an issue.
Let's revisit actually, what's happening with Jet Airways in terms of the latest story that we have. Utkarsh is now with us. Utkarsh, what's the latest on the Etihad deal?
What we're picking up from our sources is one, that the meeting which happened between Rajneesh Kumar and Tony Douglas yesterday went inconclusive. Now, what are the issues which Etihad has? Now, the most important issue, what we are being told by our sources in Etihad, is that they want to keep Naresh Goyal at bay. What does that mean? They want to cap the promoter shareholding at 22% because they do not want Suresh Prabhu to make a re-entry into the company sometime later and make a comeback into the company. Because what Etihad board feels is that the way Jet Airways was run after they had put in money initially didn't really benefit them the way they wanted. Also, what we are being told by our sources is that the kind of deals which KLM Delta entered with Jet was a competition to Etihad, and Etihad was not very favoring of the way Jet Airways was run under Naresh Goyal when it comes to benefiting Etihad. Now, these are more pressure tactics at this point of time. Etihad Airways knows the fact that Jet Airways is in desperate need of money, and that is why they want to make sure that they will only put in money with two conditions. One is that Naresh Goyal's promoter stakeholding is capped at 22%, and second, they're also against the two nominees of Naresh Goyal on the board, even though it's not Anita Goyal, Naresh Goyal. Etihad believes that that can be a proxy for Naresh Goyal, which can be working on his behalf, and that is the biggest reason they have all gone ahead, conveyed it to the lenders. In the yesterday's meeting, also Etihad laid down conditions saying we will only invest into the company if these demands are met. Now, what we have been told yesterday is that the meeting went inconclusive, but remember, these are testing times for Jet, and also NIIF, which was investing in the company, has also given feelers that they might not go ahead with the investment in Jet Airways if Etihad Airways does not come on board. Remember that the biggest funds of NIIF have been supported or have been invested by ADIA, which is the Abu Dhabi Investment Authority, the same company which holds Etihad Airways.
Okay, Utkarsh, those are of course a sticky points. I think the story also is now becoming of Etihad becoming clear that it wants to exit Jet Airways. Let me take this story forward with Jitendra Bhargav, the former executive director at Air India, as well as Kapil Kaul at CAPA. You know, gentlemen, thank you for joining us here in ET Now. This is Nayantara. So many developments at Jet Airways. If I could just put it in a nutshell, it's basically that Etihad is disillusioned. It could not agree to a middle ground with the other equity partner and the founder of Jet Airways, which is, of course, Naresh Goyal. On the other hand, the government has had no choice but to swing into action. Suresh Prabhu, in a tweet, directing the Secretary of the Ministry of Civil Aviation to hold an emergency meeting on the grounding of flights, on cancellation of flights, and if Jet Airways is even indeed safe to fly. Kapil, I'll come to you first. Better late than never. You know, Jet Airways was being flown and being carried out by pilots who may not have been paid for months, were worried about their financial situation. So would you say it's a case of better late than never?
Well, frankly, I think, yes, the ministry needs to take stock of the position, because the Jet's operational capability is deteriorating very fast. We've seen so many groundings, and as this gets delayed, the groundings will become more and more pronounced. And we are heading for a Q1, which is a peak period. And as I've been saying, that the demand is very high, and if you couple it with the election demand upside that happens, I think we're going to be having a serious issue in Q1. So if government is taking stock of the situation, my understanding is that's in line with what should be done. Because I think certainly if Jet has to collapse, there would be both domestic and international will get choked. It will get so significantly choked because you can't create another Jet Airways overnight. So I think if they're taking stock of the situation, I think that's understandable. My personal view is that the government should they have to take more difficult decisions, even if that means one of the financial institutions of the government taking a much more larger stake in Jet if Etihad backs out. That has to be done, because otherwise such a massive capacity getting released out of the system will have a major economic repercussions. So I think I'm hopeful that even if Etihad exits, there would be some financial institution backed by the government to bail this out. Because
okay, I take your point. And in fact,
you cannot let this fail, actually.
Yeah, and it is election year as well. The government cannot afford, one of Jet Airways to actually crash land ahead of general election. That's a point I want to put forth to Jitendra Bhargav. Better late than never. Finally, an emergency meeting taking place at the Aviation Ministry as being directed by Suresh Prabhu. Jitendra Bhargav, my question is, in the past we've seen the government ask the NIIF to swing into action. The NIIF was going to take a 20% stake, and with the lenders, led by SBI, it would basically mean that Jet Airways would be promoted by the lenders, government banks, as well as the Sovereign Wealth Fund of India, and be the majority shareholder in Jet. But is that the right way to go? I know it's election time, but why should Jet not go to the NCLT? It has a 40% market share when it comes to slots in Delhi, 30% in Mumbai. That's the real premium for Jet. Why should it not go to NCLT?
See, I'm not as optimistic as Mr. Kapil Kaul regarding the future of Jet Airways. for the simple reason that it is not Jet Airways' own doing in a way. It's the Indian market behavior that we have. Price sensitivity, fares are not allowed, the full service carrier cannot recover the full fare, what goes into producing a seat, etc. Having said that, yes, Jet is in a crisis situation. The first signs of crisis were evident in June, July, when Jet Airways issued a public notice of deferring payment for the salaries to engineers and pilots who have now petitioned the government. It was at that time that harsh decision rolled back the plans and kept paying, etc. So no concrete measures were taken. Now the question you have very rightly raised, can government intervene? Should it intervene? My answer is no. If Naresh Goyal is to be sanctioned, is okay, you can pay the money at the moment, clear the debt, make the planes functional, etc. But for how long? 6 months? Who do you approach after 6 months when the debt still mounts? Somebody will have to be answerable. At the moment, at least you can go to Naresh Goyal and say, you are the man accountable as the promoter. But once the banks acquire the majority stake, will they keep funding it in perpetuity? It isn't Air India where the promoter is the government of India. It's a private entity at the moment. What is the final solution? Somebody will have to resolve it because you can't have this lingering effect on the Indian market. I'm glad Suresh Prabhu has taken the initiative. Maybe better late than never, that the secretary will hold a meeting, take a call on it, on what's required to be done. You cannot have a situation, we are approaching the summer vacation season where demand peaks up. What do you do with the fares is going up? Now, ministry has a role to play. Banks, they've done their part of trying to have a meeting with Etihad, and if it is inconclusive, where can the banks go? Will the taxpayers not question funding of Jet Airways on taxpayers? Now, these are questions that you're going to find answers for.
Kapil is still with us. Kapil, what would you say? The point that Mr. Bhargav is raising, that, you can give them interim funding. Yes, that interim funding could be possible, but what happens after 3-6 months once you blow out that money?
So I think I'll just reiterate what I said. I don't think Mr. Bhargav understood me correctly. My point was that the resolution plan is in place. The resolution plan has a funding gap which needs to be bridged. That funding gap of about 8,500 odd crores would be sufficient enough as per the lenders to turn around Jet. Now, there's a key component to that. That key component is that Etihad has to participate by putting in roughly about $200 million into the company. All I'm saying is that within that banking settlement plan, within that funding gap, which has been earmarked of about 8,500 crores, you will need to find somebody who will bridge the funding gap of Etihad. But as it is, the lenders, whether Etihad is on board or not, are not going to stay with Jet for long. It's an interim arrangement till they find a suitor which will take Jet forward. So as long as the funding gap that has been identified, that's sufficient enough to turn around Jet. And all measures that are required to be done, what they did for Satyam or they did for other cases, if the government decides to put the right board, right management, and has a quality oversight, Jet is a turnaround is feasible. It is realistic and feasible to turn around Jet under the right supervision, under the right board. But the other option is if you let it go, because we are already losing a lot of time in this structuring issue. So if you lose more time, you will require more funding, and you will choke the system in Q1 and possibly Q2, because you cannot, I repeat, create another airline of Jet size overnight. So the government will have to take a call in terms of finding some other investor, which could be within the current financial institutions to the government financial institutions, and all of them will hold Jet at an interim for an interim period, which will be 12 months, 18 months. So if people like Kotak Mahindra could head ILFS, somebody similar with reputation to do the right things for Jet will need to be co-opted. Once you put that governance and quality board and management on top, and government is willing to make sure that it's restructured, I think Jet's turnaround is viable, and it is feasible to expect Jet to turn around. It's not an Air India case. it's feasible to see Jet turn around. Obviously, you would need the quality of board, the composition of the board, composition of the leadership, quality of oversight. Those are fundamental issues to make sure that taxpayers' money doesn't go waste. But as long as those elements are there, and you have somebody like Uday Kotak, who could head Mr. Uday Kotak, who could head the board and turn around from government's perspective, I think this is feasible. Jet has a good brand. It is infrastructure. It's not as debt-ridden as maybe Air India is. It doesn't have labor problem. It has quality of management. It has governance issues at the board level. Once that is corrected, and you are well capitalizing it to turn around, I think it is feasible. Yes.
Right, Kapil. Let's wait. Thanks so much for that, Mr. Bhargav. Always good to get perspective from you.